You're not trying to catch me out here, are you?
As if I dare.
You've got quite a few years' experience under your belt, haven't you?
Bought you a small gift.
Hashtag enjoy tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Safety Podcast. My name's Neil and today we're going to be talking about all things safety at RWERenewables. We've got some guests with us today and one of them is just starting out at RWE. Hello, Becky.
Hi, good to be here.
And the other, you won't be offended if I say you've been around for a while, will you, Jim?
No, none taken, don't worry.
Great stuff. Well, anyway, Becky, am I right in thinking you've just finished your first shift?
I've literally just hung up my overalls.
Really? You'll be wanting a cup of tea then, won't you? And Jim, you've got quite a few years' experience under your belt, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done a few stints for RWE in the past. I've come back to work the service campaign.
And we're very glad to have you. So, on these podcasts, I'm trying to get a sense of how we approach safety at RWERenewables. Obviously, we've all got a legal requirement to ensure our safety and the safety of others on site, whether they're colleagues or visitors, but that can sound a bit formal and dry. I'm interested to find out how that's actually put into practice. So, Becky, as someone who's just joined us, what are your impressions of the safety culture here?
The thing that struck me most is that sense of everyone caring about safety and it being a team effort.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I notice when I work here. Safety isn't just a tick box exercise, you know. It's about making sure we all go home at the end of the shift in as good a nick as when we got in.
There's a hashtag you see on posters around the site that I really like. Hashtag enjoy tomorrow. It reminds everyone to think through what they do today so they get to enjoy tomorrow.
RWE's commitment that we care today so everyone enjoys tomorrow is underpinned by the 8 life-saving rules.
I'm sure you'll point these out to me throughout our chat today, and you've got footage of your work on site?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll show how we have a safety mindset from the get-go. We're always asking ourselves, how could my actions affect myself or others?
Yep, that's the idea behind the safe method of work rule, isn't it?
I mean, it's right. This is one of our 8 life-saving rules. Basically, before any work task is started, it has to be assessed to identify hazards, and then suitable controls have to be put in place to prevent the hazards causing harm.
So, is it down to supervisors and managers to carry out those assessments?
Well, yeah, I mean, management has a duty to plan for work to be done safely. But, I mean, obviously, these can't take into account the actual conditions on the day. Safety is something we all have to think about throughout the working day.
It informs all our actions and the way we work.
Yeah, for larger sites, management informs us of these plans via a morning briefing or a pre-task briefing. But it's really important you engage fully with this.
Even if the task is one you've done before, conditions may have changed, which may have an impact on safety considerations. It also makes you aware of other tasks happening on the site.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember that we are responsible for general safety throughout the working day and not just during a task. We need to think about it when driving to site or returning home, entering the site or wind farm buildings. Members of the work party must show that they have established and maintained general safety at different stages during the working day, but I mean really, it's a state of mind.
So that suggests it's not just the task at hand.
Exactly. It's an attitude we take into everything that we do.
So, Becky, it's your first day on site, so talk us through what your task was and what went through your mind when you started work.
Our task today was to replace a failed main low voltage circuit breaker on a wind turbine. It's not a complicated task, but it has what we call inherent dangers.
And I guess that those are the dangers that you can't remove completely because you're working with electricity, something which is always going to be hazardous.
Right, it's the dangers from the processes that help turn the wind into electricity.
We deal with these by implementing safety rules. As a working party leader, I'm authorised to make sure they're adhered to.
So surely if the safety rules are followed, then it's job done.
Not at all. Everything we do and everything in our immediate environment can create extra or unforeseen hazards. These are known as environmental dangers, and we all need to be aware of them and react to them in order to establish general safety. So, before beginning work, we carry out a toolbox talk and complete a general safety risk assessment, or GSRA for short. To ensure I do this thoroughly, I run through the Tampa principles.
I'm guessing that's nothing to do with Florida.
I wish. No, it's a way of remembering all the things we need to do so we can work safely.
Bought you a small gift to help guide you through it.
All right, thank you very much. I guess this means I have to take down my Star Wars posters now, does it?
No, I'm sure you've got room for lightsabers and lifesavers.
See what you did there. Okay, all right. Well, talk me through what these letters stand for.
The T stands for tools and equipment. Looking at my scope of work, I saw that I needed a portable generator as the turbine would be completely dead. I've been trained in how to use this safely, so I knew I could use it on this job. I went to the equipment store to get the generator, cables, and fuel. I checked that it was on the approved tools register at site and that it had been PAT tested recently. The fuel is stored in a secure container, and I decanted 5 litres into the proper jerry can from the drum. I also checked that the cables weren't damaged. As I'd already logged onto the site by app, I could then join my colleagues who I was going to be working with.
So you kitted yourself out with tools from the stores, but can you bring your own tools onto site?
Contractors can bring tools onto the site, but we have to check with our supervisor that they're on the approved tools list and have the necessary safety certificates or recent tests. But we also have to be sure that they're in a safe working order before we can use them.
So, you've got your equipment. What's next?
But before any task is undertaken, we establish general safety by having a conversation at the workplace.
For me, this was the toolbox talk. This is when whoever's in charge of the work goes through what the task is and brings up any safety issues. For me, the person in charge today was my working party leader, who was Jim.
So here's a test to see if you were listening. So what did we cover?
You started by giving an outline of the work so we all knew what we needed to do. Then you identified the hazards that were present and the safety measures we had to follow to minimise the risk of them. We also went through a comms check before we started work. Then you asked if anyone had any questions.
The toolbox talk looks like a great way of checking in with everyone and making sure that you're all on the same page.
I really liked it, especially as a newbie. It focused everyone's minds on what we were doing, what the hazards were, and how we could work safely. And I felt I could ask questions without my colleagues thinking I was stupid or being a pain. Like, I wasn't sure whether I'd need different gloves for later on in the task, so I asked the question and confirmed that I needed electrical ones.
And if you're doing more of the same job the next day, do you need to do another general safety briefing?
Absolutely. Because this re-establishes general safety and covers anything that's changed since the last time you worked on the task. I mean, let's face it, you don't always remember every detail from one shift to the next, so it's important to go through it all again. You'll also get a new safety briefing if the scope of work changes or the person in charge of the working party changes. Even if it's the same job, same day on a different turbine, you still need another general safety briefing.
What happens if you don't take part in a talk or briefing?
All members of the working party must sign on to the GSRA prior to starting work to show that they understand the responsibilities under general safety.
So, just to recap, T is for tools and equipment, which means that you have to...
Check you've got the right tools.
Check that they've been inspected and or tested.
Only use them if you know how to use them properly and safely.
Right, so you've been to your next safety briefing, you've got your tools and equipment ready, so what's next?
The A in Tampa stands for access and egress.
So how you get in and out of a work area safely, I'm guessing?
I mean, that's right, yeah. Once we've got the tools we need, then the working party leader, which is someone like myself, takes the team to the work site. I double check it's the correct location, then make sure I'm the first one into the work area. I go through a formal transfer of control process. This means talking to the control room to ensure all aspects of the job are correct and we share any known safety concerns about the wind turbine. Once I've completed these tasks, I identify the route in and out and check that the access is safe so that my working party can join me.
What safety considerations might you have about how you get into a work area?
To get to where I was working today, I had to go up a flight of stairs. Once we were inside the turbine, there was another structure to climb to get to the nacelle where we had to put the isolations in place.
I'm guessing you have to check that the stairway is safe and that you can use it easily in an emergency.
Exactly. And it's also about checking how the emergency services would reach and assist you if you needed them.
But once you know that access is safe, you don't need to worry about it again.
Remember that a lot of our workspaces are accessed from outside. You have to take weather conditions into account and remember that they can change suddenly.
Is it just the forces of nature that can create issues?
Not at all. I mean, those humans are pretty good at that too. So back in the ops building, I noticed a colleague had let a delivery driver unload something in an awkward place. I mean, it'd be difficult for anyone to get through, let alone an emergency vehicle. It was easy not to sort out. Hiya, mate. Sorry, I'm just a bit concerned this is blocking the exits. So listen, I can give you an hand if you want. There's a spot just over there. We can move it and store it till it's needed.
Yeah, great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. What's great about the RWE team is that my colleague didn't take it the wrong way, like I was having a go at him or anything. He could see the point I was making. Between us, we sorted it.
That's a really important point, isn't it? We all have to keep an eye out for hazards and feel comfortable raising any concerns with colleagues.
It's not about being a job's worth or showing your colleagues up. We all make mistakes. We all get distracted sometimes. It's no big deal to point something out and solve it together.
Thinking about the work that you do, I'm guessing many of your colleagues work in areas that are a bit more challenging to get in and out of.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing anything offshore or at height, you've got to think about how you get to your workspace in the first place. Whether you're working offshore or onshore, supervisors will always inform you of any safety protocols to be followed. These are usually communicated during a site induction. So if you're working offshore, make sure you follow all safety procedures when waiting for your transport vessel, when boarding the vessel, and when disembarking. Don't access the pontoon during lifting operations. And when you are on the pontoon, make sure you don't walk or stand underneath lifting operations. Obey all the signs and safety barriers and instructions from crane operators. You may only carry small personal bags on board. All other large and heavy bags must be lifted onto the vessels. When boarding a vessel, maintain 3 points of contact at all times. How about journeys you might make by vehicle, like driving to another part of the site?
You're not trying to catch me out here, are you?
As if I dare.
I know driving is included in the 8 life-saving rules that make up We Care Today, so everyone enjoys tomorrow. All journeys must be planned, and you can only drive if you're in a fit state to do so. You have to take weather and road conditions into account, and obviously always wear a seatbelt.
A for access and egress means that you have to...
Check you've considered your access and egress. Can you get in and out of your work area safely?
Can emergency services reach you?
Where is the evacuation point?
And where is any evacuation equipment you might need in an emergency?
Okay, so now you've got the right tools and equipment, and you're confident you can get in and out safely, I guess you're good to go.
Before you do anything, it's time for M in Tampa. Method of work.
This means ensuring you have a safe method of work. This is the life-saving rule we mentioned earlier. It states that before any task is carried out, any hazards must be identified and controls put in place to prevent harm coming to anybody. The toolbox talk or similar briefing will cover the inherent dangers. So go on, what are the inherent or systems dangers that we face?
Okay, so there's electricity, pressure, mechanical hazards, heat, and of course, if you're working offshore, you've got the marine environment and the hazards that poses.
So there's no catching you out today then, is there? But of course, whenever we carry out work, we could be introducing new hazards to our working area. Tools and processes can all bring their own hazards, and these are known as...
environmental hazards.
So with both inherent and environmental dangers present, we need to know how to carry out the task safely. This is where RAMs come in.
Oh, no, don't tell me. Nothing to do with sheep.
It stands for Risk Assessments and Method Statements. They're the documents that set out all the risks and how they'll be managed. The working party leader will be given a copy of these documents, and it's their responsibility to read and understand them and identify if the method of work introduces new hazards to the work party or others. The working party leader will communicate the work method to the rest of the work party during the toolbox talk. It's important to speak up if there's something you don't understand. Better to speak up now rather than holding up things later when you have to double check what you're doing.
Sometimes you'll get sketches and drawings as well, so you can check exactly what you should be working on.
You'll also get any COSH information.
Oh, remind me, what does that stand for again?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. Okay. COSH stands for Control of Substances Hazardous to Health.
Got it in one. So basically it means identifying any substances that could cause you harm and how to prevent or minimise your exposure to them. It's things like chemicals and toxic or hazardous liquids, but it might also be particles that you could breathe in or gases that could be present.
Well, there's quite a lot to keep track of there, isn't there?
Yes, at the end of the toolbox talk, the work party leader should double check that everyone in the working party has understood the work that's required. So again, if there's something you're not clear on, this is the time to raise it.
This is especially important because once the work begins, it's up to every individual on the team to maintain safety as the work progresses.
Right, because as you work on equipment, you're changing things, aren't you? A workplace is never static.
Like our job today, it involved making safe a range of energised equipment. If we failed to address the hazards as we came across them, the working environment could have immediately become unsafe. It was up to us to stay aware and ensure general safety was maintained. This is one of our life-saving rules, applying isolations to achieve zero energy.
Although it could be easy to assume that because you're the working party leader, general safety is all down to you and you alone.
That couldn't be further from the truth. I'm responsible for establishing general safety at the start of the work, but then it's up to each individual in the working party to monitor and maintain safe working practices.
Is that just an RWE policy?
No, it's a legal requirement. We are all required by law to adhere to best health and safety practice and to manage dynamic working situations and actively maintain general safety.
And by actively maintain, you mean...
Constantly monitoring the situation by checking your own behaviour and keeping an eye out for each other. Identifying and acting on any hazards that occur by stopping work until the hazard is removed or contained and no longer poses a danger, either to the working party or anyone close by.
OK, I'm going to be a bit controversial here.
Sounds interesting. Go on then.
Well, look, you're talking like you work in an ideal world. But, I mean, sometimes we all make mistakes, don't we? You might do things without thinking about them or cut corners when you're under pressure. It's just human nature.
Listen, absolutely. But it's in those very human, very understandable moments that the most awful accidents can be caused.
That's why you need to keep an eye on your own behaviour and how your colleagues are working. You have to have the confidence to raise concerns with colleagues and be open to having your own work or behaviour checked.
It's about paying attention, even if it's a task you've done 100 times before. See, it's often the tasks you think you know that can throw up unexpected changes, or, to be brutally honest, you've maybe taken risks in the past and got away with it. Overextending on a ladder when you're not properly clipped on, for example. But this could be the moment that you run the risk and you lose. So it's just as important to self-check on the everyday tasks as it is on a complex task you've not done before.
Doesn't this all slow things down, though?
I don't think it does. It just takes a few seconds to think things through, and actually, if it stops things going wrong or accidents happening, then you're saving time.
It's about having the right attitude. Before you start work, ask yourself, have I got everything I need to do the task and do it safely? Is there anything different or unexpected about the task compared to the briefing I had? Perhaps the weather's changed and the wind's picked up speed so that lifting ops are no longer safe to carry out, or there's a risk of lightning. As I work through the task, I regularly double check everything is still going according to expectations. I remain aware of myself, my surroundings and my colleagues, and I make sure I ask any questions that occur to me.
OK, so say you spot something which you think is a problem, especially you, Becky. How do you find the courage to speak up, especially if it's to someone who's been there for years or who's several levels above your pay grade?
Yeah, it can be a bit nerve-wracking, but the thing to focus on is not who's important, but what's important. So I'm not thinking, oh, that person's so much more senior than me, but it's really important that that hazard is pointed out.
Yeah, focus on the fact that you're preventing an accident, not that you're more junior or inexperienced than them.
Exactly. I mean, I did a similar thing today. When I went to get the generator, I noticed some oil had been spilt. It clearly wasn't from the generator, so there were no worries there, but it was a slip hazard that could have nasty consequences for someone. If you stand guard, I'll get absorbent wadding to clean it up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah?
Sure.
Thanks. It was no big drama. It was something easy to sort.
And you prevented an accident by keeping the work environment safe. That means that we're up to P.
I'll give you 3 guesses.
I know this one. PPE stands for Personal Protective Equipment.
Oh, give that man a chocolate biscuit.
This is pretty straightforward though, isn't it? I mean, we're all used to safety boots and hard hats when we're on site.
It's great that wearing the basic PPE like hard hats and steel cap boots is standard practice these days, but there are still a few things to consider. You must check your RAMS documents for what other PPE you need for a job. Just because you think you know doesn't mean you do. Regulations or environmental hazards can change, so you must always check you've got everything that's listed. Some PPE has particular inspection requirements, so make sure that these are being carried out. For example, by checking the last inspection date recorded on the item. If it's due another inspection, let your supervisor know and find some PPE that is passed for use.
When you're collecting or putting on your PPE, check it's in working order, especially with items that you use regularly like gloves and goggles, as they can get damaged or worn out without you realising. It's your responsibility to check and properly wear the correct PPE for the task. Also, check whether you need different types of PPE for different parts of the job. For example, when I was proving dead, I didn't just need a voltage indicator, but also electrical gloves. Before I started, I checked that they were definitely safe to use. Making sure there were no nicks or holes takes a few moments, but could be what saves me from a nasty electric shock or worse.
So, you're suited and booted and you're ready for work, ready to get stuck in?
Not quite. There's one more letter to go. A, for safe area of work. You've got to ask yourself, is the area you're about to work in safe and clear of any hazards?
Hopefully whoever's been working there before has left it in a safe condition.
But they should have, if they've been following our safe system of work. But it also refers to what you could call housekeeping concerns. You know, is the work area clean and tidy?
Didn't realise you did the dusting too.
I'd like to see you run a duster around this site. It's more things like, are there any cables or ropes routed in a way that could be a trip hazard? Have there been any spillages that could be a slip hazard? Are barriers needed to section off an area?
Of course, before you can judge whether an area is safe, you need to know exactly where it is. As a working party leader, I outline the working area. This might mean putting barriers and safety signs up so everyone, and not just the working party, knows exactly where the work area starts and where it ends.
This is especially important when you're working near another working party. You need to make each other aware of your presence and the extent of your working area and what tasks you're carrying out. What you're doing in one area might pose a hazard for them in their working area and vice versa. For example, we were lifting tools to the nacelle, which created a hazard for the people on the ground.
In fact, this comes under one of the 8 life-saving rules, which relates to suspended load and exclusion zones. If anything is being lifted or held overhead, there will be an exclusion zone underneath it. It'll be obvious due to signage and or barriers. You must not enter the exclusion zones unless you're authorised to do so. The task is also covered by the lifting processes principle in the 8 rules of We Care Today, so everyone enjoys tomorrow. Any equipment used must be suitable for the task, be visually inspected to ensure it's free from defects, and it must have a valid test certificate before it's used.
I notice you clipping yourself onto the ladder you're working on. Is that something that you always have to do?
It's another of the 8 rules. Whenever you're working at height and there's a risk of falling, you must always use a fall arrest system. If there's not a collective fall prevention system in place, you must have personal safety devices attached at all times.
It sounds like there are several layers of responsibility for ensuring a safe working environment. Can you take me through them?
Sure, but remember all these layers are equally important. First, we've got RWERenewables, who have a responsibility to maintain a site with up-to-date and properly maintained safe systems of work. That includes safe equipment and safe working procedures.
Supervisors are responsible for allocating work tasks to teams of skilled technicians. This includes preparing and checking risk assessments and method statements for those teams.
Then there are the working party leaders. So they're responsible for establishing general safety around the work that they are supervising and communicating to the working party the area of work, the scope and method of work, and any hazards that might be present. But they must also be open to anyone's questions or concerns and take the appropriate action.
Once the working party leader has established general safety for the task, it's up to each individual on that working party, however junior or new to RWE Renewables they are, to maintain their own and others' safety. That means staying alert to the possibility of hazards occurring and speaking up if they spot a hazard or hazardous behaviour. Any issues should be reported to the working party leader.
Then, once you embark on a task, always go through the tamper checklist.
T for tools and equipment. Check you have the correct tools and equipment for the task. Make sure they're in good working order and have passed any safety tests that are required.
A is for establishing safe access and egress. This includes getting to the work area in the first place. Check that you know where the evacuation point and any evacuation aids are and keep access and egress points clear and accessible at all times.
M is for safe method of work. If you're in charge of a working party, ensure that you are satisfied that the proposed method of work is safe. Lead a toolbox talk and make sure that everyone in the working party understands the scope of work and the health and safety controls that they must follow. If the scope of work changes, or if you have any safety concerns at any time, you must stop all work and only restart when changes have been agreed and documented.
P stands for PPE, personal protective equipment. Make sure you have the required PPE for the area you are in and the task you are to undertake, including any additional PPE such as gloves and ear defenders. Ensure that any PPE you use is in good condition and has passed any necessary safety checks. This is for your protection, so it's your responsibility.
Finally, A is for safe area of work. The working party leader is responsible for defining the working area and ensuring that any safety measures such as barriers or signage are in place. Inform any working parties nearby of the area and type of work that you're carrying out.
Once the safe area of work is established, it's up to each member of the working party to actively maintain its safety.
That means taking a dynamic approach to maintaining general safety by recognising that conditions may change and situations that were previously safe may have now become unsafe.
Keep in mind the we care today so everyone enjoys tomorrow principles. Make sure you care, not only about your immediate safety, but about the safety of everyone in your working party.
That feels like an excellent note to round up our chat about general safety. But one final quickfire question. What, for you, is the key to maintaining general safety?
Never assume. Never ever assume someone else is taking care of safety. It's down to you. And never assume a situation will automatically remain safe. It's up to you to maintain it.
And Becky, how about you?
Speak up. Speak up if you don't understand something, and speak up if you've got a health and safety concern, however minor it might seem.
Hopefully what we've got across is that it's not just about reading documents and following procedures. Safety is about an attitude and a state of mind.
But it's not a tedious thing. It's not there to stop you working easily. It's there to ensure you're working safely.
Obviously, there'll be more specific safety procedures to follow for specific tasks, but I think you've given me a thorough understanding of what we mean by establishing and maintaining general safety. Jim, Becky, thanks for your input today. Until next time, stay safe, and of course, keep up the excellent work of powering the nation through renewable energy.
Thanks, Neil.
See you again.
For more information about general safety, see your supervisor or site representative, and join us next time for more safety chat on the RWE Safety Podcast.